Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. This is the review of the Bahrain Grand Prix. New host, by the way, I'll get that out of the way. I am Daniel, and I'm hosting this episode today. Joining me is your content creation officer, Anwar, and our returning guest, Lucy. So, just to jog your memory of what happened over the weekend, let's go to Lucy to get a rundown of the results.
Thanks, Daniel. Piastri won the race, also getting the fastest lap, although that no longer gives you a point. In second place, we had Russell, and rounding out the podium, we had Lando Norris. In fourth and fifth, with the two Ferraris of McLaren fourth, Hamilton in fifth. Verstappen down in sixth, followed by Gasly in the Alpine in seventh, and Ocon in the Haas in eighth. Tsunoda scoring his first points as a Red Bull driver in ninth, and Behrman making it a double points finish for Haas in 10th. Antonelli coming away 11th, followed by Albon in 12th, Hadjar in 13th, Doohan in 14th, Alonso in 15th, Lawson in 16th, falling down the order a bit after a 10-second penalty, Stroll in 17th, and Bortoletto as the last of the classified finishers in 18th. Sainz DNF'd with tear in the side of his car and a potential radiator issue. And Hulkenberg finished the race but was later disqualified for excessive skid wear.
All right, thank you, Lucy. So I guess the biggest difference for this race compared to certainly this time last week is we actually got some racing. The long straights of Bahrain with DRS and the heavy braking zones, I guess, do after all give us better racing. So I was just curious as to what you guys made of the race overall, your overriding thoughts and feelings after a semi-eventful Bahrain Grand Prix. Anwar, let's start with you.
I thought this was far better, and I feel as F1 fans we deserved a good race after watching the ball fest that was Japan, and so this was a nice, refreshing race because there was lots of overtakes. There was a lot of strategy. I know the safety car did kind of nullify all of that in truth, but having the entire grid being on each of the three tyre selections, that was something that was nice to see. And I really hope F1 learns a lesson out of that because for so long we've seen boring one-stop strategies, and I think, the race weekend in Bahrain gave us a reminder that having a two-stop and having some strategy jeopardy can really impact our enjoyment of the race as well as aid overtaking as well. So if I were to rate this, I'd probably put it at 7.5, maybe even an 8.
Yeah, good rating, I'd say. I tend to agree. I think the offset of the tyres and the different strategies, the two stops that we had going on, even a three stop, which didn't really work to be honest, but it was nice to see at least. Lucy, what did you think?
I mean, I absolutely loved this race. That may also have been because I didn't have to wake up at 6 a.m. to watch it, which will always improve the race in my opinion. But no, I really loved it. I thought that, there was a really good combination of some really interesting strategy decisions. Obviously, the safety car did kind of ruin it, but we'd already had some interesting strategy decisions be committed to before then. And so it kind of didn't bother me too much. There was some good racing. I think the higher tyre deg from Bahrain, especially compared to last week, did make things more interesting. The undercut overcut strategy. That's always fun. I like undercut overcut strategies. And I think it spiced up the championship a bit, especially with Red Bull being a bit further down the order and Piastri taking the win. I'm actually going to give it the same ranking because my slight downer about Australia was that it didn't kind of give us an accurate perspective on the championship. And then my slight downer here was that maybe the safety car kind of slightly ruined some of the tension that had been building. But I'm going to give it the same score that I gave Australia and an 8.5.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's fair enough. I think I'd go for an 8, to be fair. These strategies that we had were very varied, but you were right about the safety car in that a lot of them just took the hard tyres and ran to the end, even though, to be honest, the hards weren't really in the correct working window for a lot of that stint. We heard Lewis Hamilton saying this tyre sucks and things like that, but at least it kept it interesting for the rest of the race. Okay, so let's get into the race winner on Sunday, who was Oscar Piastri, and it was a consummate performance. Really, it was dominated from the very first corner. It was under control. He said he's happy in the car. He's comfortable. He's not currently focused on the championship fight, but come on, Lucy, like that's gonna give him some proper motivation that he can really challenge for this title now, right?
Oh yeah, he's got to be up there as a serious title contender now. I mean, yeah, that was a very, very convincing performance. I mean, China was as well quite a dominant win. His victory in China never really looked in doubt. But with China, there were still the questions of, was Australia a bit of a fluke with him not doing so well, or was China a bit of a fluke with him doing really well? And I think this has just shown that he's a really consistent driver, that he can deliver when it matters, and that McLaren properly have two drivers now who are fighting for the championship. I think there's only a couple of points in between them now. And so, yeah, I definitely think he may not be thinking about the championship, but even if it's not playing on his mind, it will definitely be playing on the minds of the other people who might want to compete with him.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it looks like Oscar Piastri is here to stay now. We've seen before that there have been some minor inconsistencies in his Formula One career. Let's say he wasn't always on Lando's pace, but over the past four, I think it's been pretty clear that he's made a step up over the winter. I find it funny actually that the races that he has won this year, or rather the races that he haven't won, have been the ones that mean the most to him. So it was his home Grand Prix and the race that took place on his birthday were the two that he didn't win. But the other two were brilliant performances, no doubt. Okay, Anwar, what did you make of Piastri's performance? And also, how will that impact Lando Norris going forward? Is he really going to start feeling the pressure? Because he doesn't quite seem comfortable in that car, would you say?
I think the result this weekend serves as a warning for him, particularly to Norris, because I feel like he's always had this feeling of he is the number one driver at McLaren. Because of his consistency last year and Piastri's relative inconsistency, I think that's a completely different story. I think the narrative has completely changed now. And so I think that Norris has to perform. I think there's a lot of pressure on him now. And I feel a lot of that pressure as well is kind of self-inflicted in the sense that he brings pressure on himself in the media. The media are only going to continue asking questions about his performance because, let's be honest, he was pretty poor this weekend. Sixth in qualifying, it was an error-strewn race as well. And so I think Piastri's definitely got the upper hand, and it's up to Norris to try and fight back and, I guess, make sure that he is still in that conversation. Because if he continues to perform like he did this weekend, he's going to fall out of that conversation.
I mean, we heard Norris saying in the post-race press conference that he was surprised to still be the championship leader after his struggles, and that he's not, he's confident in himself, but he can't be confident in the car. And he worked late on Saturday evening and after quali to kind of fix the race pace so that it was better, because he qualified sixth, obviously, which was pretty abysmal. And he found a couple of reasons why he was struggling. But then in the race, it's like he was trying not to finish on the podium. Lucy, do you think those comments about how he's not feeling comfortable and he can't extract the maximum from this car, do you think that's kind of almost encouraging his rivals to capitalize? Because I know for me, if I'm playing a game of badminton or tennis or something and someone is a couple points down and maybe they say, oh, I'm not playing so well today, I don't know what it is, it's just not clicking. Maybe I'm a terrible person, but normally that kind of spurs me on, like, come on, I can capitalize on these mistakes, these errors. They're not kind of feeling comfortable. Is it the same in Formula One, or have the days of these psychological advantages kind of passed us by?
Well, I think it is the nature of competitive sport, is that it's kind of, you do your best when you kind of maximize your own talent, but also when you can kind of combine that with kind of taking advantage of when the people you're competing with also have like moments of struggle or moments of less confidence, is you kind of have to take that advantage. And definitely if Norris is saying that maybe his issues and concerns are to do with confidence in the car or confidence in the setup, then Piastri being in that same car, clearly, at least from what this weekend has indicated, quite confident in the way that he's set it up, will see that and think, okay, I have a clear advantage because even if on paper we have the same car, but I kind of feel like I can push its limits a bit more and extract more out of it. So I don't know whether his lack of confidence will be sort of a permanent thing. If it was just this track setup, you know, Jeddah's very different track, or, you know, what's going to happen there. But I definitely think that kind of Piastri's made himself championship contender because he performed so well on a day where Norris struggled. And if kind of Norris had also done really well in the GP, then maybe we wouldn't be seeing Piastri as, you know, how holding the upper hand in the title battle. That's a nice phrase that Anwar used, so I'm going to repeat it.
Yes, holding the upper hand indeed. I mean, it looked like Norris was kind of allergic to overtaking around the on the inside during the race. He was just kind of stuck on the outside trying to get his way past Hamilton, Leclerc, and it just wasn't clicking. But you're right, and that Piastri has really forced himself into the conversation. Okay, something I want to move on to is the other driver who finished on the podium, which was George Russell. My word, did he have an eventful race, from the lockup at turn one, trying to get past Piastri, to all those electrical issues that he was facing. Just to give a bit of a background on that, just to tell everyone really what he was experiencing, because I think it's kind of important to appreciate the work that Russell's done. Basically, his brake-by-wire system went into passive mode, which means that there wasn't a balance on the rear axle between mechanical braking on the brake pads and brake discs and electrical braking, which is kind of harvested from the MG UK. So that means that braking's basically slower. It's quite imbalanced. And a side effect is a long brake pedal as well, which is something that Norris was suffering with in China, and it just kind of saps all your confidence away. Because, you know, and it was a temperamental issue as well. So he didn't know whether it was going to be soft or hard when he got to the next corner, which I imagine is quite unnerving. But to finish P2 ahead of the second McLaren in a race like this, when McLaren very clearly had the fastest car, is George Russell in the top three drivers on the grid right now, Anwar? Where would you say he ranks in terms of performance and kind of extracting the most from the car that he's got?
I think on form he has to be in there. He's demonstrated unbelievable consistency in his own performance, and he's kind of eliminated the errors that we saw earlier in his career at Mercedes and as well at Williams. So he has to be in that top three for me, particularly when we see him in a car that really shouldn't be in second place or in contention for to be in and around the podium spots. It shouldn't really be there, because I feel that on certain days the Red Bull is a quicker car, on certain days the Ferrari is a quicker car. And so I think we have to applaud him for his performance, and from what we're hearing behind the scenes, he's probably going to get rewarded with a new contract too. So what we're seeing is exactly the same thing as what Mercedes are seeing. And it's funny because if he was given a car that was just a little bit closer to the McLarens, we probably would have another driver in and around that conversation for race wins, because his performances are definitely warranting of being in championship contention. It's just a shame the car isn't there to match it.
Yeah, certainly. And those rumors about Mercedes chasing Max Verstappen for a future drive have certainly died down as well as a result, I'd say. Okay, Lucy, I want to get your take on Russell's performance, but also that quite strange moment that he had where he opened the DRS when he wasn't within a second of the car ahead. I think it was because he pressed a backup button because of the electrical issues that he was having, but it was set to DRS and not radio in that moment. He wanted to talk to the team, but instead he activated the DRS. What do you think about the steward's decision? No further investigation on that one. Was that the right call?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly as well, I just remembered that George Russell's car was kind of falling apart at the same time as Mercedes were deciding to make him do like 25 laps on a set of soft tyres, which, given the fact that earlier in the race, people were sometimes struggling to make those soft tyres last for like 15 laps as well. That George was kind of properly going through it, I think, in this race. I mean, I'm not an expert on F1 stewarding. I don't work there, but I think that that they didn't penalise him because it was they measured the speed increase that him accidentally pressing open would have given him and compared it to how much he braked. It was like 0.02 seconds gained compared to that he intentionally slowed by 0.28 seconds. And I think it was maybe Baku in like 2017 or 2018. I can't remember exactly, but a similar thing had happened and the drivers hadn't been, to a few drivers actually, and the drivers hadn't been penalised there because they'd also intentionally lifted to counteract the fact that they'd opened the DRS. So, I mean, there can be debates around whether maybe the protocol needs to change about, should it just be kind of doesn't matter any mitigating circumstances, you just get a penalty if you do that, whether you then lift or not. But that's kind of not, it's not sort of a case of the FIA ignoring what they usually do in favour of, I don't know, trying to change the result or anything like that. I think that was a fair decision at the end of the day. And I mean, as well, kind of, yeah, but once again, props to him for dragging that seemingly falling apart car to a second place with another McLaren behind him on a set of soft tyres, which really should not have still been functional at that point.
Do we not think, though, that cars like Norris and Leclerc were unfairly affected by that too? Because we could have seen a situation where if Norris was sure about DRS in certain areas, he potentially would have been able to get past Russell. I kind of I'm taking the opposing thought, I guess, here, where I feel if it is impacted other drivers as well, it's not something that's just purely impacted his car. I feel other cars have been disadvantaged. Do people feel the same way, or is that just me?
I don't personally, but anyway.
No, yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, he did make up about 200ths and then gave up about 3/10 on the straight when he lifted off to close the DRS. So there was no sporting advantage in that way. And then the issue didn't really persist past that. Obviously, there were some very strange other circumstances going on with Charles Leclerc's DRS randomly opening in the mid-corner at one point when his engineer was telling him to change settings, which was bizarre, to be honest. I've never seen that before. So it seemed like the transponder issues and those problems that were affecting many people were not limited to George Russell, it seems. But on the whole, I tend to agree in that the FIA, when they set a precedent for things, they tend to stick to it, which is good for the most part. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but in this case, I think it was the right decision.
I think as well. Sorry, just last thing. Leclerc, sure. I don't think was in Russell's DRS when him accidentally opening it happened. It all was kind of close to being in the DRS, so there's kind of no way that could have changed whether Leclerc was able to get DRS or not, which I guess maybe would have made the FIA change their opinions. And I think kind of given the way that the race ended, I feel like I personally would have been more annoyed if they'd I don't know, black and orange flagged him for that transponder issue and made him retire the car, or made him come in for a pit stop to try and fix it, to kind of try and enforce that kind of not impacting other drivers. I probably would have been more annoyed had that happened than with the scenario which we had. I would have felt that was less consistent with when the FIA tends to intervene in technical issues, compared to proper physical, there's bits of the car falling off issues.
For sure. And at that point, it would be more like forcing Mercedes to retire the car as well, because I'm not sure it would be a quick fix to sort out those brake-by-wire issues that he was having, and with the transponder as well. I think it would have been a bit too much to ask for. But as it was, the car was in a safe condition. It was still running, just about. There were just those small issues to contend with overall. Okay, I want to move on a bit. There was an issue, well, not an issue, there was some contact at around the midpoint of the race between Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda. Despite that, they had very different fortunes. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda went on to get his first points for Red Bull, but Carlos Sainz retired out the race. Do we think there was an improvement in Carlos Sainz's performance this weekend compared to what we've seen previously? Is he starting to get on top of the issues with that car, Anwar, or is there maybe more that he can get from it, or where do we sit on that?
I think we need to give him a little bit more time. I think he was a bit close to Albon, I'd say, but I don't think he's there yet, in my honest opinion. I don't think he's going to be there consistently competing with Albon at this current, because Albon has been in that team for quite a while. He's very established. I think Carlos, I know he's adapted to cars well in the past, but I think it's a very big jump going from Ferrari to Williams, and so we've got to afford him a bit more time. In terms of his performance this weekend, cool, it's a little bit better, but I still think there's some things that he'll be unhappy about, particularly the end result, where he kind of, I feel he got in the wars a bit, and I don't really see Albon getting into the same battles or having the same vicinity to contact, I guess. I don't know. That's the way I saw it. I don't know if Lucy sees it any differently.
Yeah. Lucy, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I definitely think that, well, in qualifying, I think there was definitely an improvement just performance-wise from Sainz. I wonder whether that maybe had something to do with the fact that we were back on a track that was also where all the testing took place. So, he's kind of the most adapted to driving that Williams car around this track before getting here for the weekend. Obviously, qualifying, though, we can't really compare because Albon did not make Q2. And I know this podcast isn't about qualifying, so that I will leave it at that. But I was very annoyed about that. But anyway, so qualifying, I was impressed, getting into Q3. I think that was good. Yeah, in the race, it's kind of clear that, which is sort of obvious compared to a guy who's been there since 2022, that he's still finding his feet with that car and kind of its capabilities, and kind of how far he can push it, and how, if he has to change his driving style and things like that. But I still have hope. I always have hope for Williams, because they are my favorite team. In case you guys didn't know.
Irrational fan right here.
Irrational? What do you mean?
It's just, dedication to Williams is pretty funny.
No, we should all have a bit more faith in Williams, I think. Up and coming team, come on. P5 in the championship.
Listen, okay.
P1 next year.
2020 was really painful, so I won't take any slander about me sticking with Williams irrationally. If anything, it was 2020 me who maybe needed to be told to find a team that could actually score some points.
Yeah. You're a very loyal fan then. Good. That's a good characteristic. What was I going to say? Yeah, so there are a few things surrounding Carlos Sainz. It was last weekend, James Vowles made a comment about what his struggles were. He said that he picked up some bad habits from Ferrari, and that in that Ferrari car, you can get away with combined braking, which is braking and turning at the same time without tending to lock up or anything. But in the Williams car, you're not really able to do that. And braking is such an instinctive thing for Formula One drivers that it's kind of ingrained into their muscle memory based on the car they're in. So Carlos Sainz is kind of needing to rewrite that muscle memory in order to extract the performance that Albon can from that car. I think Bahrain, it could be a true performance increase, or it could be a false dawn. I mean, I don't think Albon deserved to be out in Q1 for sure. There was definitely more in that car. He just got caught up in traffic, and the tyres lost a lot of temperature. So Carlos Sainz did well to get into Q3, obviously, but I think you're right, Anwar, in that we need to wait a bit longer to see what he is able to do. And Lucy, I'd just like to ask you quickly a word on Yuki Tsunoda, what he's managed to achieve. Have Red Bull, because he's only within 2 positions of Max Verstappen at the end, the checkered flag. Do we think Red Bull have found the answers to their struggles, or are we expecting more to come from him in the future, or both?
I mean, I think in terms of him only being within a couple of positions of Verstappen, it's maybe a little early to tell because, I mean, I think this will be more of a thing going into kind of next week. Red Bull didn't have a great weekend, so it's kind of difficult to know how much of that is his true pace compared to Verstappen and how much of it is Verstappen not having a car that he can extract very much out of. But I definitely think, Red Bull should be happy with Tsunoda getting points. I think it's the first like Red Bull kind of second driver, if you will, getting points for at least a few races since last season. It's been a while, so I think it's good that he's had consistency in the RB, and I think it's good he's been able to translate it over the Red Bull. But I mean, this is only his second race, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does improve.
It just goes to show, I feel like this move from Tsunoda into the Red Bull from the RB has already paid dividends. Could we really foresee Lawson scoring points 2 races after he got dropped? I didn't think so. And so I think from Red Bull's perspective, they'll look at this and think, okay, we made the correct move because we've got a result here. I know the Red Bull wasn't as good, or nearly as good as it was last week. We saw Verstappen struggle with it and complain quite a lot about grip, about turning, about anything and everything really. So I think that it's already been a successful move. I just want him to be a little bit more consistent now and continue to make the steps that he's making, because from Suzuka to here, I feel that there's a step, particularly in quality and in the race. Now let's see if he can make another step to be a little bit further into the points than 9th.
Yeah, I remember Franz Tost when Yuki was first at, I think it was called AlphaTauri then, yeah. He was saying that Yuki was able to put in those quite large steps up to a higher position, getting closer to Gasly almost with every weekend, just making steps here and there in qualifying. Composure was a big thing for him to work on. I think he's absolutely got that nailed this year and has done for a while, if we're honest. So I think there are a lot of positives for Yuki Tsunoda going forward in that Red Bull who had a stinker overall. And also, talking of Lawson, he did have a proper howler. I mean, he got 15 seconds worth of penalties for 2 collisions that he had, one with Stroll and one with Sauber. I think it was Hulkenberg. But he might be coming under pressure soon again if his performances don't step up. I mean, they've got to give him some more time, but he's going to be looking to pick up the performances soon. Okay, shall we move on to predictions, and we'll discuss a few more of the talking points along the way through that. So, Anwar, over to you for some of the predictions.
Cool, thanks, Daniel. Let's go through the predictions for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Callum isn't here, but let's start with him. I got his predictions right here. So he predicted a Norris pole. That obviously didn't happen. In fact, he had a bit of a stinker in qualifying, so no points for him there. In terms of his top 5, though, I think he's got a little bit more success because he's put Piastri first, which nets him 3 points, and he put Norris second, which is 1 position off, and so he'll get a point there. Third, he put Verstappen. Verstappen did not finish third. I don't think he finished in the top 5, did he? Yes, he didn't. He finished 6th, so no points there, unfortunately for him. He put Leclerc in 4th, which he did finish in there. He did finish 4th, so another nice set of points for him there. And then he put Russell in 5th, and Russell finished 2nd, so no points there. But honestly, not a bad total there with 2 correct predictions and 1 pointer. So, cool. Do you want me to read your guys' ones out, or would you like to read them out?
Lucy, do you want to go for yours if you have them?
I can do mine. Yep. These are absolutely terrible. I don't actually think I've got a single one of these right, which is slightly humiliating. So I said Norris on pole. To be fair, in my defence, when it came to pole position and also for most of these, I basically just flipped a coin for which of the McLaren drivers I said would be on pole, and unfortunately this time I picked the wrong one. And I also said he'd get P1, which he did not. But fortunately, the benefits of apparently predicting McLaren 1-2s, I think I may actually salvage a point from saying Piastri would come home P2. I then said Verstappen in third. That obviously did not happen. I said Russell in fourth, so maybe it actually would have been useful if he'd been overtaken by Norris, / got a penalty, but that didn't happen. And I said Tsunoda in fifth, so maybe I think, as I may have slightly guessed last time, predicting top 5 was a bit too optimistic, but he got points, so I'm going to say that's not as horrible a prediction as it could have been.
I feel that was more to do with the Red Bull lack of performance this weekend rather than Tsunoda underperforming. So there's not a lot of blame that can you put your way.
No, true. Yeah, that was a shocking performance from Red Bull. Okay, I'll do mine and then we'll head back to Anwar for his, because I feel like ours are pretty similar. I think we predicted the same top 3. So
yeah,
position, I went for Charles Leclerc, which at P3, I mean, he was kind of slightly close, but obviously those Ferrari upgrades not quite deliver on the promise that we thought they would. Piastri,
it was definitely closer though. I feel like we glossed over this, but I thought McLaren didn't have the advantage we expected it to have, particularly in qualifying.
Well, where was Leclerc? He was about 2 or 3 tenths off, but yeah, maybe that's slightly closer than it has been in the past. I think Ferrari have moved themselves closer to certainly Mercedes in the competitive order than they were before, but I think they're going to need to do a lot more developments like that if they want to catch McLaren. I mean, they pulled out a lot this weekend. I mean, they had a new floor to cure their ride height issues that they've been having. They changed the mirror support around them. They changed the whole suspension layout from a push rod to a pull rod, which has huge aerodynamic impacts on the car. So to be honest, I was expecting a little bit more. But Lucy, what did you think? Were they about where you thought they were going to be? Or I mean, based on your predictions, maybe. But did you think they'd be a bit higher?
I wondered, but I think if you saw kind of practice some of the early parts of qualifying, like at some points the McLarens were like half a second ahead. So I'd say that maybe them not being quite as far ahead as we thought would probably come down to sort of things like maybe variations in like setup and qualifying decisions and like temperatures, as opposed to maybe a signal that the gap is less wide than we'd predicted. But to be honest, I think given how my predictions went, I shouldn't be allowed to predict anything. So I think maybe we should just assume that the opposite of whatever I just said is actually true.
Your predictions have really done like a number on your head, haven't they? Like you are down in the dumps because of it.
It's only because my Australia ones and my China ones actually went quite well that I got the impression wrongfully that I was somehow really good at predicting things, and yet that is not in fact the case.
Lucy was disappointed by her lack of wheel knowledge, but there we are, aren't we all? Okay.
Another thing I want to mention is I feel this race could have gone very differently if the safety car didn't get pulled out, because Ferrari had that medium tyre offset in that second stint, and it looked like it was reaping them rewards. If there was no safety car, I feel the Ferraris would have come back here come out of this weekend in Bahrain with a much more favourable result than they got. So I think that's something to remember, because I thought for once the Ferrari strategy, it looked a lot better.
Yeah, true. I mean, they were very unfortunate with the safety car. I mean, they only had the hard tyres left, really, which was they weren't really performing as they would have hoped, which you saw on Verstappen, really. He was sliding around on those. I think the safety car really did screw Antonelli quite a bit more than Ferrari, to be honest. He was looking strong on his. Well, I mean, he'd put on soft tyres just 5 laps before the safety car came out, and he looked like he was going to go strong, run to probably to the end on those, or maybe try an aggressive 3-stop strategy, which I would have been very curious to see how that worked out. But unfortunately, the timing didn't really suit him for that one, so he was forced to pit again after just 5 laps, which probably put paid to any points hopes that he had. And obviously, it's his first non-points finish of the Grand Prix season, so that will be disappointing for him because he has quite high expectations of himself and the team. But to be fair, I think that was more a Mercedes pit wall blunder than anything else, but we've seen a few of them this year, to be fair. Okay, carrying on with my predictions, I predicted Piastri for the win. Let's go. But apart from that, they were all shocking. Norris was second place for me, which is just 1 place off, but I think most people thought it was going to be a McLaren 1-2. Leclerc in P3, which he couldn't quite manage. He would have been had that Russell penalty come through, of course. Russell would have been demoted to P4, I believe, but that wasn't the case, and rightfully so. Verstappen P4, which was not... I thought that was being pessimistic, to be honest, but apparently Red Bull had other ideas. And Antonelli P5, which really didn't come through. Okay,
Yeah,
Anwar,
you kind of got stifled there by the safety car, right? You look.
exactly.
I think he was on the 3-stop, and then the safety car came after and made that 3rd stop. So
Yeah,
tough race for him, unfortunately, but it's still it wasn't his fault. So there's not much we can blame him for.
No. It certainly wasn't his fault. I mean, that's just the way that racing goes. Sometimes strategy doesn't favour you, and you get left out in the cold. Anwar, what were your pole and top 5?
Cool. So I correctly predicted a Piastri pole. I said that he'd also convert it, which he did. I put Norris second. He obviously didn't get that. He was 1 position off, so 1 point there. I also put Leclerc third, I believe, and then that was also another point because he finished in 4th. Russell, I said finished 4th. He finished second, so definitely overperformance from there, from him. And then I put Verstappen in 5th. I, for whatever reason, foresaw Red Bull struggling. I don't know if I saw it in a dream or something, but for whatever reason, I was successfully right, I guess, in that. So top 5 and pole were pretty good from my end. Let's move on to the DNFs and wild predictions, shall we? So I'll read out Callum's. He predicted that Alonso would DNF. Alonso did not DNF. He was just slow. So no points there. He also put in his wild prediction as an engine fire. This did not happen because the only retirement, so to speak, was the Sainz situation where he had a hole in the side pod. So no points there either. Lucy, would you want to read out your wild prediction and DNF?
Yes, so my DNF was Leclerc, which didn't happen. Although every time he didn't overtake or got overtaken, I was slightly in suspense as to whether it might happen. But my random prediction was at least one pit stop would have a 15-second plus stoppage time. And, well, Red Bull pit stops were slow. They weren't that slow. And also, if Lawson had the courtesy to come in for a stop on the last lap instead of just waiting to accumulate all those penalties post-race, I maybe could have got that one. But unfortunately, a slightly long pit stops, but not 15 seconds long pit stops.
Yeah, shame on that one. Okay, I went for Bortoleto to DNF, which just didn't happen. A bit of an anonymous race from him, to be honest. Sauber just doesn't seem to have much pace, but at least he didn't get disqualified like his teammates. And the random prediction was, that was really random, wasn't it? At least 3 lockups into the first corner on lap 1. There was a lockup from George Russell, I think, but...
Yes, there was. I remember that.
Yeah, but 1 out of 3 does not get me those points, I'm afraid. Anwar, over to you.
Right, I need you guys to tell me how I should proceed with this one because I feel
I
this
already know
one's
what you're going to say.
because I've said that my driver who DNFs is Hulkenberg. Now,
Absolutely not.
for God's sake,
Absolutely not.
No, he finished the race.
He finished the race.
We're not allowing this.
but he wasn't
not allowing-
classified, guys. He was not
Democracy
classified.
says no. I'm sorry.
Oh,
No.
Democracy's
He
overrated.
physically crossed the line. It counts.
Yes.
So unfortunately, no DNS points there, much to my annoyance. But I did successfully get mobile prediction right, which is ultimately a lot more lucrative given that it's worth 5 points, and that was Gasly gets his first points of the season. The Alpines, I wanted to touch on this quickly before we closed off the show. The Alpines looked a lot more competitive this weekend. Even like I know Doohan finished 14th, but he was running that race for quite a while in the points as well. So were we surprised by that at all, or was this something that we kind of knew this was potentially possible?
I had no idea personally. I didn't know Gasly had it in him for that on that day in that car. I didn't know the car had it in the car. To be honest, the strategy was it was aggressive. It was bold. I think it paid off quite well. To be fair, on Gasly's side, he was kind of let down a little bit by the safety car timing. But on the whole, he was making good moves. He was very disappointed to have let Max Verstappen through on the final lap. So there was a kind of a mixture of emotions for him on that front. But Anwar, I imagine you're pretty happy with that result, considering that it's moved Sauber down into last place again. I mean, we established last podcast that you're a little bit of a Sauber hater and not shy about it too. So
I just think what's the point of them? Like cool.
Yeah, okay.
You're really just filling up the grid right here. You know what I mean? So I am here for their downfall, and it's just great to see. Honestly, I'm so happy.
Well done.
It leaves me with a great smile on my face.
You got what you wanted.
And the other thing that gives me a smile on my face is the points total from the predictions. So just to run through everyone's totals for this week, from my understanding, Callum got 7 points and that's all out of his top 5. Lucy, you got a total of 1 point, which is I think the lowest we've had all year. So congrats there.
I'm a record setter. I'm setting records. You know.
Again, it's all about legacy, isn't it? And you're setting a legacy of the lowest prediction points. Daniel,
I'll try and go one better next week.
Just predict like the kit cars and an Alpine in the top 5. You should be able to do that. Daniel, you got 5 points this weekend. I believe it was 3 from Piastri and then 1 each from the other 2 podiums. And this weekend's winner was me. That sounds so arrogant to say. That didn't feel great coming out, but here we are. With a total of 8, 9, 10, 11, 14 points. Now,
I think that's the new highest total for the year, right?
That's impressive.
I'm gonna go check because Allrun scored pretty well last week. Or was it Daniel who scored really well?
I thought Daniel, you got like 13. So
yeah.
I'm whipping out the Japanese Grand Prix predictions just to see. It was you, Daniel, who got 6, 8, 13, which would make 14 the most so far. Obviously, we've got so many races to go, so that is definitely getting shattered at some point. But that is it for our predictions.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that's
well done.
Yeah, well, that deserves a well done, Anwar.
What skill I showed there, didn't I?
Yes, definitely skill. I mean, we went for the same top 3, and I still ended up with 9 points less than you. How is that? That's an absolute.
This prediction section has really been a tale of two halves here. We've had 2 different records set.
It's a record-breaking episode. What can we say? Everyone should tune in for that reason and that reason only.
A hallmark day in the Warwick F1 show. Well done, everyone. A good day at the office. Okay, so I think that about covers all the big stories from the Bahrain Grand Prix. We are looking forward to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix this weekend. There'll be a preview out for that at some stage, so look out for that one. But I've been your host. Thank you to Anwar and Lucy for being on this podcast with me, and see you all next time.